Hyper-V, and System Center 2012, we architected into a private cloud where we have a resource pool that we're able to provision resources, infrastructure as a service to our end users. We're able to provide them a self-service capability to consume these resources, and we're able to give them a way to measure how much they're using in the private cloud. So we took this knowledge and we moved it to the public cloud. In Windows Azure, basically what it is a platform that's available on the internet in Microsoft data centers where you can build applications and run them on the internet. These are applications that are hosted in a public cloud. So who knows the difference between private cloud and public cloud? Okay, so we're getting better. Awesome. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the public cloud and what new things that we've done there. So when Windows Azure, yes?
Sorry, came back up on that.
Yes.
Just summarize what is the difference between private and public. You just take the question. Sorry, out of that.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was okay. So one of the reasons I came for the difference is to understand what's the difference between private cloud and public cloud.
Sure.
And one of the bottlenecks we always had was open security.
Sure. Absolutely. We'll talk about that. Okay, so just a recap. Private cloud is something that you architect inside your own data center, is in my, I'm not an artist, but I think it's a reasonably good picture. Whatever we have here, inside the data center, inside your own firewalls, is a private cloud built with Microsoft technology, which is Windows Server 2012, System Center 2012. You're able to build this private cloud and allow people to consume it, internal people to consume. Public cloud is sitting outside on the internet. So things like Office 365, where you get email, portals, etc. What we're talking about is Windows Azure, which is also a public cloud service. It started off as a platform as a service, meaning you basically build an application, upload it to Windows Azure, and it will run. It runs inside Windows Azure, and what's beautiful about it is that you can scale up and scale down as you see fit. So the application gets more hits. Let's assume we built a web portal and we put it out on Windows Azure. And during a certain time of the day or time of the year or time of the month, more hits come to this website. We can automatically make Windows Azure, that service in Windows Azure grow, receive more requests and fulfill them. So the elasticity in Windows Azure was really good. But then feedback from our customers and partners said, we want more on Windows Azure. Platform as a service is great, but we want more. What is it that you're looking for? They said, we want infrastructure as a service. So do you know what infrastructure as a service is? Noting every time I ask a question and someone answers me, I will give them a t-shirt. Like this one, just white. Yes?
It's the hardware and the network setup.
So what is infrastructure as a service?
I don't have to worry about my data center. You will support that.
And what do I provide?
You will provide the network. I will provide the application and sure the operating system and my side of your side. So that's what infrastructure is.
So infrastructure as a service, as the name would say, is infrastructure as a service. Would you like to add something to that?
You provide for me the secure CPU power, memory, storage, and you have and you manage. You don't have to worry about it.
So
I host my application.
So I'm going to give you another chance to get a t-shirt. That was a better answer. I'm sorry. Is he your friend?
My side is the stuff.
I'll make sure I get it. So this is a very good answer. Infrastructure as a service is basically the cloud provider, whether they are a private cloud provider or a public cloud provider, will provide compute, network, storage, memory, manage it, and deliver it to the user be it an application owner or whoever it is. And they can come in and install whatever they want on top of it. So this is exactly what infrastructure as a service is. You can have infrastructure as a service in your private cloud. You can have infrastructure as a service in the public cloud. In the private cloud, we said you built it with Windows Server 2012, System Center 2012, and you have a private cloud on premises. In the public cloud, this is what the industry was asking us to do. So we came up with Windows Azure Infrastructure as a Service, which would allow customers to go into Windows Azure using a credit card or using a monetary commitment to buy some resources and use it to create virtual machines that we will take care of the storage, we will take care of the network, we will take care of the memory, we will take care of the CPU. We will patch all the Hyper-V servers underneath and we'll provide everything. And all you're getting is that infrastructure where you can come in and install stuff inside the VM. Are we clear on that? It's good? Let me switch back to my presentation. So we released the Windows Azure preview in June 7th or July 6th. I don't know. I don't know if it was an American guy who wrote this or a normal guy. But we released it a few months ago, and it was in preview. And basically what it was, how it was received by the market is really positive. James Statton from Forrester says, only Microsoft as of today offers the broadest infrastructure as a service and platform as a service from a single vendor cloud platform. The company has also taken steps to make the consumption of Windows Azure as simple as possible for its installed base of developers. So not only, look, if you need to develop anything, if you need to write code, it's not infrastructure as a service. It needs to be easy enough for someone who hasn't done development in years or has never done development to go in and spin off, create a VM. And we'll show you. So, Windows Azure portal is so beautifully designed. All these people are we're so happy with Windows Azure. So let's go to the basics. So using the platform, we said you're not supposed to programmatically do anything to get a basic service. So we have the portal, the management portal. You go into Windows Azure, you get the management portal, and from there you can start creating stuff. You can create stuff also using scripts. Now, does that mean it's not infrastructure as a service? No. You can do everything with the UI. You can do everything with the development, with the management portal. But if you would like to automate the development of anything, you can do it with scripts. So we left it open. So I'll give you an example of how this can be done. So management portal scripting, and we've also opened up an API for companies to basically develop stuff that will use Azure. And we have a few companies right now, for example, consuming Azure storage. So we have a company called Commvault, Stealth, and StoreSimple. These are guys that basically have APIs that connect into Windows Azure and enable you to route, for example, your archive data off of your SAN and put it in Azure. When you do that, you're able to reduce the costs of storage, and you have that in like transparent way of moving data from on-premises to the cloud. So what exactly is a preview? So the preview, when we released infrastructure as a service preview, basically we didn't have an SLA, no promises of the service being up and running, but you can go ahead and play with it, try it out, test it out. There was limited support for this, and basically we're just getting ready to send it into general availability. So Azure Service is generally available, but Infrastructure as a Service is still in the preview, and we will announce GA very soon. We will announce it very soon when we will have it as fully supported with SLAs, etc. So with Windows Azure, one of the special things is that when we provide an SLA to a customer, this SLA is backed by money. So, which means we say 99.95% availability. If we breach that SLA, we give money back. And to this date, we haven't had to give money back. So, for us to be confident enough to have the same service levels for IAAS, we have it in preview right now. It's like a release candidate in software. And it's there, and you can start playing with it, testing it out. You can even run production stuff that you don't mind having not having an SLA on. Yes?
Earlier we covered website and website now and the green preview. That's the case.
Yes.
That's the case.
The green preview, yeah.
So it means it's not supported.
It doesn't have an SLA yet. Yes, it doesn't have SLA or official support. Once we announce general availability, then we will have preview gone, everything is running business as usual. So our support story was also announced. So now we have support packages from within Azure that I will show you as well on the website, where you can go and buy support more superior than the forums or the Q&As that you can that are available as free. And we've also expanded the gallery of things that you can provision from within Azure. So now we have included BizTalk, we have per hour SQL available from the gallery, which I will show you as well. So applications, it's all about the applications. Now when the developers came, when the industry came back to us and said, we need infrastructure as a service, it's not because the platform is limited. It's because they want to do more with their applications. Okay? Sometimes you really need to have a virtual machine that you build in a certain way for the application to run properly. So applications are the most important thing to the cloud story, be it private cloud or public cloud. Are we okay so far? So we have, basically in the gallery, you can go and create SQL Server, virtual machines, just spin them off. You can also go create Windows Server Active Directory, and you can go create SharePoint servers within Windows Azure that are customizable. The same way that you would build SharePoint in your own premises. So this comes with a bit of a conflict. You heard me say Office 365 will provide you SharePoint online. Sorry. But what's the difference here? Office 365 is great. It's very configurable. You can go and configure things, but you can't go in and customize the SharePoint. Do we have any SharePoint developers here? Except for you and you. Okay. So you need that power to go and play with the web parts the way you're always used to doing on premises. Right? So this is where infrastructure as a service, running SharePoint, installing SharePoint, the same way you would on premises, you would do it on Azure and go and build your own web parts and whatever. I'm not a SharePoint developer, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's as if it's there, as if it's your own, you go and build it in Azure, and you play around with it the same way you want. Same way with SQL Server. Okay, so we have SQL Server 2008, we have 2008 R2, we have 2012, same thing with Windows Server, we have 2008 R2 in 2012, and SharePoint 2010. So the versions, so Microsoft applications plus Windows Azure are better together. What does that mean? Who attended the keynote this morning? Yeah? In the keynote, it was hybrid cloud, right? So in hybrid cloud, basically, what is a hybrid? Do you know hybrid cars? Have you heard of hybrid cars? Not very famous in Saudi because, mashallah, the petrol here is very cheap. But elsewhere, hybrid cars are basically, they have a motor engine, a fuel, petrol engine, and a battery. And what happens is you put some fuel and it runs and it charges the battery. There's an alternator that charges the battery, and then you can actually cruise on electricity. So this is hybrid. It's using two kinds of power sources to run the car. Hybrid cloud is basically building an application that would run on private cloud and on public cloud, which would answer one of your questions. Security is very important to us as Microsoft. I can pretty much assure you the security we have in our data centers surpasses anyone's security in the region. We're the most attempted hacked companies in the world. So security is very important to us. We have a lot of certifications like FIPS and HIPAA and all sorts of stuff. But sometimes data, you cannot make it leave your organization. So if you're, for example, a bank, and you have specific customer data, or a hospital, your hospital policy is not to allow the patient information to leave your premises. We respect that. So, how can I build a SharePoint site that is hybrid, use the power of Azure, and continue to keep the data, the sensitive data, on premises? I can put a SQL server, for example, on premises, build the application server in the cloud, and have that connectivity happening, and then you have a hybrid cloud. So this is why we say Microsoft is workloads or Microsoft applications are better together with Windows Azure. So you can build hybrid clouds, and this is just one example. You can come up with many more. And you know, we're going and crunching through all the different products that we have. We started off with SQL Server and then SharePoint to support them on Windows Azure, and we're going to continue to support more and more products as time moves on. So we're supporting more products on the platform, and we're quite happy with it. So what is this? Yes.
We talked about the private cloud.
Where's the mic behind you? Sorry.
So let's take this. Let's take this hybrid example. So I do want to run my applications on the public cloud and in different countries. I want to have databases in different countries too. And I have regulations that say data of any country has to stay in that for our business, which is insurance. The data has to stay at each country. So yes, I want to have an application that's accessible, like
Globally accessible.
Globally, right? But the data has to stay
in each country of residence.
So my question now is, I will use the public cloud. Now, in each data center in each country, I will have a private cloud too, or can I just have virtualized servers and SQL, or just regular SQL? That's the first question. And the second is,
it's hard to ask. I don't like hard questions. I'm just joking. So let me answer your first question. Maybe you'll remember your second question. So what I understood is you're an insurance company. You'd like to have an application that's globally available, but the data for each country should reside within that country due to sovereignty, data sovereignty, and governance reasons in the business. Does that mean you need to build private clouds in each country? It's a twofold answer, yes and no. The first fold is that, well, let me answer your question with a question. Can you host the data in the same country but in a different data center than yours?
Yeah, I'm open. I can host the data anywhere. It has to be within the country.
It just has to be within the country. Excellent. So we have public cloud, we have private cloud. Now I'm going to throw a new thing at you, partner clouds. So we have partners using Microsoft technology, Windows Server and System Center, to build private clouds within the country that they serve the country with. So we have a few in Saudi Arabia. I don't want to mention their names. I can run through them. I had a problem mentioning names before. but that we have a few in Saudi Arabia, for example, that build their infrastructure the same way, and you can consume cloud services from within their own data center, okay, and manage it with the same tools that I will talk about today. So this is, I think, the most feasible option, and it's lowest capex, and it will really optimize your operational expenses as well. So then these different hosters within the world will be hosting each country's data, and then the application itself, the live application that people will hit from outside, can reside on Windows Azure. And on Windows Azure, you know, what we're getting is not data, we're just getting screen static data that's not getting into the database itself.
Okay, let's assume I do want to have the data in my service because of security issues.
Yes.
What do I need to run in each site? Do I have to have Windows Azure, or what do I have to run in each location?
Excellent. So if you want to do it in your own private cloud, you will need.
Does it have to be a cloud?
It doesn't have to be a cloud per se. Okay, but you'll need obviously Windows Server, System Center to manage it, and you'll need to have SQL Server, and you'll need to have Active Directory. Because at the end of the day, the application will be talking to the SQL Server using some kind of credentials. These credentials need to be known on Windows Azure and on your local private cloud or in your data center. So what we do is what's called Active Directory Federation between Windows Azure and your data center. And then you can use the same credentials to do that. So essentially you'll need Windows Server, System Center, Active Directory, all the same stuff that you use today, SQL Server. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So, interestingly enough, we had, you know, at some point we were going to launch something called Windows Azure Appliances. So basically it's like Windows Azure, but it's a full appliance kind of, like a freight container with servers, and you just buy it and put it in your data center and you have Windows Azure, but we stopped that. We decided to continue with System Center, Windows Server to architect it. We're working with our partners, HP, Dell, Cisco, IBM, and others, to help you in buying what we call fast-track appliances, where it's basically a server, like an enclosure, a blade enclosure with multiple servers that's pre-installed with Windows Server, System Center, and running in a private cloud fashion. Have I answered your question? Thank you. So, the gallery. So this gallery is what we use. It's basically like a shopping list or a menu, an a la carte menu that you can go in Windows Azure and request what kind of virtual machine that you would like to create. So you can create Windows Server 2008 R2 virtual machines, Windows Server 2012, Windows Server with SQL Server, SUSE Linux, OpenSUSE, Ubuntu, CentOS. Hold on, Microsoft is saying Linux stuff. Yes, we can run Linux on Windows Azure. Okay? Because also, developers develop part of an application on Windows, another part of it on Linux. It's reality. We can't live in a nutshell and think the whole world is running Microsoft. So we've opened up our platform both in the private cloud and the public cloud to support Linux VMs. So what about licensing? What do we do with licensing? Windows Server licensing is per hour license in the cloud. So you use a virtual machine for an hour, there's a per hour charge. You use it for a day, that's 24 hours. You use it for a month, you do the math. But we also have ways for you to reduce the cost if you commit for example, 6 months or 12 months. Up front, you get reasonably good discounts as well. So that's how you buy Windows Server in the cloud. How do I buy other applications? So for example, I have SharePoint. How do I buy that? So are most of you Microsoft customers and partners? Most of you would probably have something called software assurance with your licenses. This is one of the new benefits of software assurance, where if you buy SharePoint on the premises, you can take that SharePoint and move it to Windows Azure. This is what we call license mobility. Make sense? External licensing, something third party. It's really up to them how they want to do it. Okay? Now, another mobility. Now, this is an interesting mobility, I think you will find. VHD mobility. Do you know what VHDs are? What's a VHD? Virtual hard drive. So we have virtual hard drives in your data center. We have virtual hard drives in Windows Azure. What do you expect I'm going to say?
Can easily move.
Correct? Move from one place to another. You can move things from your data center to Azure, from Azure to your data center. And guess what? I told you about the different setups that we have. Service providers. We can have things moving across to them as well. Happy? Good? Exciting?
It's directly from you to them?
Yep. Power of System Center. System Center 2012 is amazing. This is what lights up all of this. This is what brings life to this whole story that I'm saying. So when you have System Center 2012, you can go, you can see your cloud, your private cloud, your public cloud, your partner cloud, shift, move. Obviously it's not going to happen this fast, but you know, there's data transfer that needs to happen, but it will happen. Cool? Provisioning, creating things, creating assets within Windows Azure. So what we have are OS images, the operating system image, the VHD which contains the OS, and then we have data images. So we take these things and we use them to create that virtual machine that's going to run your application. Does that make sense? Oops. So the provisioning story, what happens? This is you. Okay? You want to add a server, so you put the host name, the password, whatever else you need to put, virtual network settings, etc. And you send that over to Windows Azure Compute. Windows Azure Compute will send a request over to Windows Azure. It'll make a disk for you. It'll go to Windows Azure Storage and then to the provisioning repository. So you've set that up, it's sitting there for you to consume. Okay, I missed that, sorry. So Windows Azure Storage will go into the stock images that you have from the gallery and whatever images that you've uploaded, because you can upload your own images as well. There's even a facility for you to send a virtual hard disk to Microsoft, to Windows Azure, and they will take whatever VHDs are on the hard disk or data or whatever, and they'll put it on Windows Azure for you. We understand that the uploading may take a while. So we'll use this information, sorry, I'll just back it down. We'll use this information using the stock images and whatever images that you have in your Windows Azure storage to create your OS disk and your data disk. We'll secure it, lock it down, and then you can start creating virtual machines from that. Okay, so this looks a bit complex. You have your cache for the VHDs, and then you can, using the cache, you can create the OS disk from the OS disk storage account, the data disk from the data disk account, and if you've uploaded any ISO images as well, you can have those and use them to create and provision applications within your virtual hard disks and your VMs. Okay, so let's switch over to the duplicate. Yep. I'm going to switch over to Windows Azure itself and show you. So is this clear? Can you see, or do I need to increase the size? Let me see. Okay. So this is my trial account. I don't have a paid account. What we have here is the control panel. So from here, we can see all items I have. So it says, it looks like you're new, create something to get started. I don't have anything created yet. Whoops. So I have my virtual machines here, cloud services, SQL databases, storage, networks, service bus, etc., etc. So I want to create an item. I want to provision something. Create an item. What do I want to create? So it says new compute or new data services, either SQL database or blob storage. Application services. What do I want? A service bus or a queue or a relay. Networks. If I want to create a virtual network, and we'll talk about networks now. Or I want to buy something from the store. But unfortunately, because I haven't put a credit card, I can't see the store to buy anything from there. So we have something called Windows Azure Store. So for partners out there, you can actually create intellectual property, put it in the Windows Azure Store, and people can come and actually buy it. Same way you use an app store, the Apple Store, right? Windows Store. So let's create a new virtual machine. That's what we're here to do, right? So, compute, virtual machine. And I want to either do a quick create or from gallery. So I'm going to choose from gallery. So this is the gallery I've been talking about in my presentation. We have Bitstock server, SQL server, server 2008 R2 Service Pack 1, etc., etc., etc. So let's go create Windows Server 2012. Next. Let's.
Machine or platform?
Sorry?
Machine or this is infrastructure as a service or is it platform as a service?
This is infrastructure as a service. All I'm talking about today is infrastructure as a service. So right now I'm creating a virtual machine from the infrastructure that's provided to me from Azure.
You select an OS, isn't that a platform?
Platform is more than OS. So platform as a service, what we will provide is the development framework as well as a database or a data storage, and on top of the infrastructure. And the virtual machine will be abstracted to you. You won't see the virtual machine. All you see is the fact that you can upload a piece of code, whatever it may be, .NET or Java or Ruby, put it into Azure and it will just run. So we're abstracting all of this. So infrastructure as a service, we provide the OS as well. So,
if I may elaborate.
Sure, there's a mic there for that.
So if you talk about infrastructure as a service, think of infrastructure as a service as your data center. Okay? So what you're getting now is a virtual machine from us. So what Essam is creating now is basically a virtual machine. Now, you have two options. One is to create a virtual machine and then boot it with an OS, right? So right now what you're doing, you think of it as you're putting a CD in your drive. You have created a virtual machine and saying boot from CD, right? So this is going to boot from that pre-configured Windows Server 2012 CD, create that whole virtual machine for you, right? The only thing that you don't provide here is, how much hard disk space you want, how much, how many network cards, etc. But what you choose over here is what is the size of your VM, how much memory it's going to have, and then we will configure the OS disk for you and give you the virtual machine, and then you can take it from there. Does that answer your question?
There's a question in the back, Fazan.
Yes.
What about other resources which we have to define on the virtual machine, like about, as you said, like the hard drive size, the network cards, the RAM?
So each virtual machine, if you remember in the morning I showed you a configuration tool. You choose the machine that you want. So you have extra small, medium, large, extra large. And that defines the capacity of your virtual machine. So it goes from like, I think...
it's up there, it's up there. Extra small.
Yeah, so it's up there. So the extra small is like 1.7 gig, right? With one core processor. and it goes all the way to 8 cores, 14 GB RAM. What you don't control is the size of your OS disk. I think it's about 100 GB or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so the...
Come again? No, that's the OS disk. The OS disk comes pre-configured, you don't change that. Then you can add additional disks to it, and then you choose how big you want that disk to be. So the data disk is what you choose. As much as you want.
As much as you have, that much you have to pay.
So whatever disk you add, you pay for that. Okay?
Thanks for that. Okay, so going back to our portal, so we can choose. I think that's head on the wire. So we can choose the size of the VM we want. So in this case, I'll choose a small VM, and I'll just go back to this, and then I'll create a virtual machine name. So let's say Riyadh Cloud Computing Boot Camp. I'm sure no one else has that name. Does anyone have that name?
I don't think so.
No. The password, I'll choose a password to connect to the virtual machine. Okay. Oh, this is giving me some kind of, maybe it's too long. Yeah, boot. Next. Okay, so now I have I can choose whether I want it to be a standalone virtual machine or connected to an existing virtual machine that I have. So this is where we go into the discussion of virtual networks, where you can go and create a virtual network within Windows Azure so that multiple virtual machines that you create can talk to each other, can ping each other, can send requests and calls to each other. Okay, so for now I'm gonna leave it as a standalone virtual machine. Now I'm gonna give it the DNS name that you can connect to from the web. So it's gonna be Riyadh Cloud Computing Boot 1. Okay, so it'll check whether it's a unique name or not, because again, this is a DNS name that's sitting on the worldwide DNS. Storage account, whether I have a storage account or not, so I'm just going to set it to use an automatically generated storage account because I haven't configured the storage account yet. And then I can choose where I want this virtual machine to live. So I can choose West US, East Asia, Southeast Asia, North Europe, West Europe. It's up to us.
We don't have anything in the Middle East yet.
The
closest we have is Europe.
Yeah, North Europe is the one that has the best latency for us. Best latency, lowest latency to connect to the data center. Okay? As far as I know, maybe that's changed. I don't know. Next, availability set. So this is something worth speaking about. So an availability set is basically when you and please jump in, Fozan, if so. An availability set is really important because this is how available your virtual machine is going to be. So if you've created an availability set where you have multiple virtual machines together, and for some reason or another this availability set fails, then you might have a problem. So you need to architect it in a way, so it does need some intelligence from our side to define multiple availability sets and create single affinity between them so that they can all talk to each other. But then what happens here is that you have basically, let's go to the hardware. You have a rack and you have servers inside the rack. And if this rack fails, obviously everything in the rack will fail, right? What we will do automatically is we will create a virtual machine with a copy of it in another rack within the same data center. So if this rack fails, this rack will continue to work.
The whole rack fails, it's usually just a server. Should I assume that all the servers would be together?
So I'm talking about worst case scenario. So if the server fails, obviously it will jump to another server, and I'll show you how that's done on the disk. So, but I'm talking about disasters. Yeah. So it's a disaster within the data center, which happens all the time, by the way. All the the time. Servers are failing, racks are failing, adi. This happens all the time. So what happens is we have another copy of it running on another rack, and we can even choose to have another copy of it running on a different data center. So we have update sets. So when we want to do the maintenance of the Hyper-V hosts inside Azure, obviously we will need to do some restarts. So we'll move the virtual machines out to other VMs, do the maintenance that we need to do, bring it back, and continue to operate. So this is update zones. And then we have availability sets, which are essentially the availability of the service to you. And I'm not going to configure any availability sets because I don't have the luxury of time. And then now we've started provisioning our virtual machine. Okay, so we'll give it some time to cook up. It shouldn't take too long. And I'll go back to my presentation. So we've done this story. And
mind if I ask you to do this again?
okay.
The objective of this is to provide, what's the objective?
How do we provision things in Windows Azure and customize the provisioning? So let me go to the end and work my way back. So if we look at, whoops, that's too far. Okay, I'm lost for, okay, this is doing crazy things. So I've created the VMs, right? These VMs that have been created had to come from somewhere, either from the gallery, or we can upload custom stuff. Okay? Fawzan explained that we have two kinds of disks. We have the OS disk, which is about 100 GB quote-unquote Fawzan, and we have the data disk, which is essentially what you'll be running your applications on top of. Yeah, where the data will be stored. So this is something that you can control and buy yourself. So you can buy additional storage on the data disks. Tamam? Where do these come from? They come from the customers. They come from the customer's storage account. So in this account, you can go and upload your own stuff. You can upload your own data disks, default data disks, and OS disks that you can use to spin off virtual machines. Okay? How can you populate this storage account? You can do it in two ways. From the gallery that we showed, all the different VMs that we have, and you can upload things or send things over with DHL. Tamam? So if we run through it again, I want to add a server. Send the request over to Windows Azure Storage. We'll have the disk, which is basically an unattended installation of Windows Server or any other operating system. Unattended. This is what we're requesting. I want to install a server.
Unattended Windows Server or data hard disk?
It's just a command that I send in. I want to do an installation of a virtual machine. When I go to the portal and click through, what will come out is an answer file, an unattend.xml. This is just going into way too much detail. So the unattend, what will it do? Either it will call something from the repository, or from the gallery, or from our own storage account, depending on what we've chosen to do. Okay? We'll take those, it will create the different disks for us that we can then use to create the virtual machine. So I actually went through this whole process through the management portal. Okay?
You're just talking about internally how does the creation of that system center work, right?
Yeah, Azure. It's just all Azure. Okay, so now capture or upload, same thing. We can capture an image from within our data center and send it off to Windows Azure. So this is the other side of the story of capturing and uploading a virtual machine, a sys-prepped OS that is ours, configured in our own way to Windows Azure. Okay, so I'm just, because of time, I need to run through. So what will work on upload? So we can, as we said, we can upload virtual machines into Azure to basically spin off virtual machines from, right? So I can go and take something and send it up. So what will work? It needs to be a sys-prepped VHD, a Hyper-V virtual machine, hard disk, which is sys-prepped. Okay, it can be 2008 R2 or server 2012. Okay, you send that up and you can use it as a Windows Azure image. What about disks? Azure disks, same thing. It needs to be Windows Server VHD that's Hyper-V. And you can use System Center to convert VMware to Hyper-V. I would love if you do that. That's awesome. And then send it off to Azure. Just, oh, okay, I need to give out a t-shirt. Off of Azure. Who knows who is the market leader in virtualization in Saudi? You need to give me a t-shirt. Well, too late now. Yeah. 6 months ago, we took over the market share. We exceeded VMware, and we're #1 hypervisor in Saudi. Sorry? Yeah, Hyper-V, #1 in Saudi Arabia. Not in the world. In Saudi, in Turkey, we're #1.
How is it worldwide?
Sorry?
What's the market share worldwide?
Worldwide, we're about, someone help, I think we're about 30%. Versus VMware is about 50%, 55%. We're growing 300% year on year in virtualization share worldwide. We're going to get them. So the disk layout on Windows Azure Storage. So this is the disk layout, as you see there. We have the virtual machine, which has the host operating system and obviously the storage disks. So what happens is these virtual machines are basically going to be sitting on the disks in Azure. And they're going to be sitting, they're not going to be consuming full disks. They could be shared across multiple disks or sharing space with another VM. Okay, so the virtual machine is happy, everything's okay. We can go in and do a partition or a disk part, and we can split up the OS disk into another volume. And this volume can, again, sit down and live on the same disk, or it can go and move on another disk. So why do we do this? Why do we split up things across the disk layout? Any guesses? Sorry? Balancing of... Exactly. So, because when we crunch up many things on the same disk, then we'll have the limitation of the spindles themselves on the disk that will be too slow. So when we start balancing things around, as the gentleman said, I owe you a t-shirt, or a mug, you can choose. Then we can start seeing improved performance overall. So we start sharing things. So as an example, we have a SQL VHD that's running on this disk, and then we put another SQL VHD and another SQL VHD, and you know SQL, it's a lot of read and writes to the disk. So what we do is we balance things out so that we have a consistent responsiveness on the disks themselves. Okay, so I don't know what this is. And what I'm going to do is, how much time do I have, Fozan? Sorry?
You're nearly out of time.
Nearly out of time. So if you excuse me, gentlemen, I'm just going to jump through a couple of slides. Okay, so this is just to give an idea of storage prices. 100 GB for $12.50 a month. So 1 terabyte is $125 a month. How much does 1 terabyte cost in your own data center? So you're only paying for what you use. So managing VMs. How do I group my VMs? So we spoke about having multiple VMs, and we want them to be able to talk to each other because they're a single application service. What do? Sorry? Correct. I owe you 2 t-shirts. One is enough? Okay. So we have the first standalone machine that I created. Let's go check on the virtual machine. Okay, it's still doing its thing. So standalone virtual machine. When we put multiple virtual machines, we create what we call a cloud service. And this cloud service can have also a load balancer at the front. This is something that we provide as part of Windows Azure, so that when requests come in, so assuming we have multiple web servers, we can have a load balancer up front, and when requests come in, they can start sending the requests to the different web servers on a round-robin basis or whatever. Okay, so this is done within a cloud service. This is how we group VMs together. Okay, so what does grouping get me? Load balancing, high availability, subnetting. So I can create a subnet within the cloud service so that all the different virtual machines are in the same subnet and they're able to talk to each other. And DNS connectivity provided from within Windows Azure itself. So this is what I spoke about earlier, the availability sets, where we have essentially 2 racks, 4 racks, VMs living on each rack, and we have the load balancer sending requests to all the different VMs. And when one rack fails, we'll have stuff running on the other VMs. So our load balancers are also providing a level of availability as well. Windows Azure Virtual Network. So this is what I wanted to get to. So this is really interesting. What happens here is we have our corporate network connected to Windows Azure. And we do this connection using what we call virtual networks as well. So, nice marketing term, it's your virtual branch office. So you can extend your enterprise network to Windows Azure. And we actually have configurations that you can download depending, certain VPN models are available where you can go and download the configuration file for your VPN concentrator, put it in, and it will create a virtual tunnel, a virtual network tunnel into Windows Azure for you. So you will automatically be set up to use Windows Azure. So this is essential for hybrid clouds. This is how the data will be sent from your corporate network to Windows Azure to enable hybrid clouds, hybrid cloud applications. Cool?
Is that a device or an appliance?
So if you have a VPN device in your premises, you go and say, for example, I have Cisco device XYZ. You put it in, you take the configuration file and run it on your own device, and we have VPN concentrators as part of the Azure service that will once you give me a configuration file, it will configure the other side on Windows Azure. You put it on your side, and then you automatically have a virtual site-to-site network from Azure to your CorpNet.
What the benefit that I get from this virtual network? What virtual interface actually is the keyword based? Or you can have, for example, remote access for Windows Azure account. We can have access like this service. Okay,
it's just boot-based interface. The management console is just boot-based. So what's the benefit that I get from?
So you probably missed the first half of my talk. We spoke about hybrid clouds. So hybrid is basically when you have an application. For example, the application server, the website are on Windows Azure, and the data for sovereignty reasons is in your own data center. So for the calls to come in from the application to your data. Correct.
Okay. Actually, I was have a question for you. Can Microsoft offer some kind of remote, for example, connection, just like the actual remote? It would be easy, you have the management web-based management console.
What kind of remote connection?
Desktop. Yeah. The ones that we have.
You're wrecking my demo. Come on, man. No, I'm just joking. Yes. So when you create any VM, you'll automatically get a MSTSC file, which is a remote desktop file that you download to your computer.
Because I think in web-based management console there will be some restrictions.
Absolutely. No. Infrastructure as a service. Fauzan said it. I don't know if you hear. It's your own data center. You treat it as if it's your own. You go in, you do remote desktop, and you manage it, you manage the volumes, you do whatever you want.
But actually also, I have one question regarding cloud in general. When we come to real life,
Yes.
internet basically actually connected between companies via fiber.
Correct.
For example, we need this connected with the Europe and United States via fiber and the White Sea. For example,
The Red Sea.
if any disaster happens, what the solution is in this case? Does Microsoft have a data center in this region or something like this?
No. So what we have are content distribution networks. So we don't have Windows Azure data centers, but we have like caches of certain things that you will have locally available. I'm not allowed to say where we're going to open.
Okay, it will be like the backup.
It's not a backup, it's just content.
I think after the last disaster that we had, I think because this is not only Microsoft.
He said cloud computing in general.
It's not just cloud, it's even your local telcos, the banks, businesses, they all rely on internet. You cannot.
Okay, but most of them actually even want their server or their.
But in today's business, and in today's business, connectivity is vital, right? Most businesses need to connect to the outside world. So if I'm not mistaken, we do have a backup solution now, from what I've heard. So it's not just one connection to the outside world. Even if that the cable gets cut or something happens, you have a backup that you can reroute your traffic.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We have solutions now that there's no single point of view.
Yeah. So I had a couple of discussions with the guys from Flying Telecom, the Indian company who take care of these underwater cables. And at that time, it was just before the Red Sea cut that we had the discussion, and it was a bit of a disaster. But they were sharing with me their plans on how they're going to have alternate routes through the Arabian Gulf and multiple cables within the Red Sea. But obviously, this requires investment from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, from Jordan, from.
I think there are some wireless or some solutions like that. I think the bandwidth will not.
Saudi Arabia does have, I believe, as far as I know, Saudi Arabia does have backup links which are wireless. So like VSAT and kinds of things like that.
But in Russia, actually, we are dependent on the internet call using this data center.
Correct. Absolutely. Yes. For Windows Azure, you are dependent on the internet. For private cloud, obviously it's within your own corporate network. For hybrid cloud, if it's within Saudi Arabia, you're depending on the grid in Saudi rather than the international links.
According to data, it is that not all of your business is going to run on the internet, right? You are
if I want, I don't want anything. I just want the laptops or the desktops in my company. I just want the data center to be. But then this is what actually, if I'm a businessman, I will control over that. Why should I have a hybrid network? Why shouldn't I have only rely on the public cloud?
You have, for example, backup plan right? Your ISP provides you, like, for example, there are many companies who provide you multiple points of internet. For example, if it goes down, they have mobile goes down, they will give you,
ITC.
I'm talking about the terminal connectivity. So your point of view is connectivity. There's nothing in the cloud that's stopping you from going there, right? Your concern is the connectivity. There are ways that we get there. From a business perspective, you can go into agreements with companies which provide you one of the solutions. So you're not having a single point of failure.
Guys, can we take this offline because my time is running out? I'm really sorry. I'd just like to. We can have a chat, but I think I'm already over time by 7 minutes. Yes. So virtual networks, virtual network in the cloud. So we're able to build secure connections from our data center all the way to Windows Azure, and to be able to do all these different things like sending data securely, building hybrid clouds, etc. Okay, and providing authentication information as well. So again, I need to run through these. So one of the things as well that I'd like to talk about is Active Directory across sites as well. So we have... Talk to Umit. Umit will be doing the next session, which is Applications and IAAS. So I'm not going to talk about it. So what's really cool is there's something called Windows Azure Active Directory. Yes. I just wanted to mention that because it's cool. So we have the VPN tunnel, etc. Okay, so I'm going to slide over to